Big up IT. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising soleil of our beginning day, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our far side. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus long on the way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met Thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget Thee. Shadowed beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. Big up James Weldon Johnson. Lift every voice and sing. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom. Mir, ni hao, buenos dias, buenos tardes, here's Aquaba, welcome. What up though? This is Convo with Zuri G. I am Zuri G, aka Peter Johansson Osisi, and the convo today is with brother AhmahtsiYahu. So brother AhmahtsiYahu is a brother of African ancestry who comes from the legacy of the Middle Passage and performs return back to the continent of Africa. In that process, in his life, he works, he toils, he strives, he studies intentional community, sustainable organic agriculture, how to build and maintain a community particularly off the grid. Thus, when he travels to Africa, to Ghana, to Kenya, to Zululand, to Israel, and additionally to Ethiopia, and additionally, he brings with himself and with the brethren around him a consciousness and an intentionality of community, repatriation, and seeds of sovereignty. So at this moment, he resides with a community and a number of endeavors, one of which is called Bamboo Roots Collective, in the Cape Coast of Ghana at this moment, and is building community in the Cape Coast of Ghana. And he facilitates repatriation of people of African ancestry, particularly from the United States, to visit West Africa, to visit Africa, and even to repatriate specifically to Ghana. He helps with paperwork, and additionally to facilitate the formal process, and to build and live and contribute to life, brethren of Africa and the world. So in this convo, he shares that experience. Obviously, that's a whole lot, from his internships and study at intentional communities on this continent and the Western Hemisphere, to his travels, and additionally, there's only so much that can be covered in an hour. So this is an endeavor of sharing a portion of that experience. He has a YouTube channel. I should probably put that in the link. That's something to consider, yeah. But in the meanwhile, here is the convo. Here we go. All right, so we are rolling. So brother AhmahtsiYahu, we've talked before. We've chopped it up through the past year or so, and I've seen much of your work with the Bamboo Roots Collective. Am I getting that correct?
Yes, Bamboo Roots Collective.
And also you've got some other adventures, but basically you're doing intentional community. You're doing the initiative, I think it was the Sovereign Seeds, but you're doing organic agriculture, and renewable energy, sustainable, intentional community, off the grid kind of infrastructure. And additionally, so you're basically building community from scratch, but from the soul as well, with the conscientiousness of Afrocentricity, returning to our roots, connecting with our brethren, and building in a way that's increasingly healthy, comprehensively, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, all around. And so, as I was just mentioning a few seconds ago, I share you and what you're doing with your brethren in Cape Coast, in Ghana, as an example, like the quintessential example of cats who are doing it, and not just giving it lip service, or not just like getting mad and frustrated on the weekends or whatever, but committing to it like tough, and inspiring along the way, and educated. I mean, you've gone to the eco villages, you've learned how to do intentional community, build the infrastructure, water collection, efficient electricity, and additional methodologies of that. So it's like serious. And so without me talking, I'm just like setting the stage for what our convo is today. But that's where you're coming from. That's how we started. I saw your YouTube channel, and then I responded. You're responsive. And I'll say this one other thing. I find it interesting because you're a nice guy. You're like a legit nice guy. And you might be like, well, you don't know the whole story. Well, of course, everybody. But like you're a nice guy.
All praises.
At the same time, you're like no BS. Like you're like, yo, we got business to do. Like we're serious. So you have an interesting balance that way. And I think a lot of cats look at me as like a sing-song kind of happy kind of dude or whatever. But when they find out like what I'm doing, they're like, yo, wait, hold up. That dude is serious. And so it's like an interesting kind of balance of your like calm and solemn, but like nice. And me, the kind of like funny, whatever. But wait, hold up, don't sleep on him. Kind of situation. So I'm a lightweight game, recognized game, but your game is different, but it's the same. But anyway, it's a beautiful thing. You got talent, you got gems, you got treasures to share. And so I'm looking forward to this convo. And basically I approached you on for the topic of this convo on the idea of building community. So one of the things that you do is you're settled in Ghana and the Cape Coast. You've been gifted, or I shouldn't say gifted, but you've been blessed for whatever word is better than that. But you've been provided with a 49-year lease, 49.9. You have a specific decimal that you utilize. Or no, that's the acres. That's the acres that you have. But anyways, there's a 50-year lease for a certain plot of land, a very generous plot of land that's been provided through a chief who is indigenous to Ghana, who provides to your collective for the purpose of establishing an intentional community. And so what you're doing at this moment is you're doing the surveying of the land. You're plotting it out. You're working on blueprints and establishing the lay of the land for building intentional communities with residential facilities, community facilities. And additionally, you're soliciting brethren who are interested in visiting to visit, brethren who are interested in repatriating to move and invest and settle within this intentional community. You have support from local brethren and brethren who have already patriated, and you assist in brethren who want to repatriate with the paperwork. And additionally, so you're working like the total package kind of repatriation deal kind of situation. And so you provide brethren with consultation along that process. And so this convo specifically is with the intention of addressing those brethren, but I think brethren can go to you directly for that thing. But at this moment where I'm in the Cuyahoga area of Ohio, there are a lot of brethren who are interested in repatriating, but it's a big step, and they're a little bit scary. They're a little bit over intimidated by that. And so some of the thought is like moving out there or visiting. Anyway, let me just get to it. The thought is building community. And so what the interest is hearing your insight about building community where you are, but it also tips that brother can have here of like building an intentional community right in the hood at this moment. And so what I like to do is shut up and then invite you to talk about what you're doing. Like if you give a synopsis of where you've come from, the thinking behind it, and what you're actually doing at this moment, all the different fronts that you're working on in terms of potential community. I'm going to press mute and just listen.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for the invitation to participate on your podcast. I'm honored. I'm deeply humbled by this opportunity. And on behalf of our organizations, both Bamboo Roots Collective, our Seeds of Sovereignty Youth Program, as well as our NGO AhmahtsiYahu, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to participate. We are essentially a parent company, that being AhmahtsiYahu, our NGO. AhmahtsiYahu is a Hebrew phrase which loosely translates means soil and seed. From our NGO was later born our Seeds of Sovereignty Youth Program. Our Seeds of Sovereignty Youth Program works in the areas of teaching renewable energy, renewable resources, holistic organic agriculture, and now we're branching into sustainable home building. These are all sustainable development principles that we teach, that we impart to children here in the Cape Coast area of Ghana, and ultimately we seek to expand our curriculum throughout Africa. However, certainly we have a home base now of Cape Coast, Ghana. Later, as a result of my ambitions to establish sustainable off-grid communities here in Ghana and ultimately Africa, was a collective born out of, I would say, our YouTube channel initially. It became a platform that would allow us to reach out to any large number of diasporans, as well as our indigenous brothers and sisters here in Ghana and Africa, where we came together in like minds. We realized the overlapping interests that we all had, whether it be just the idea of living communally or living communally with sustainability in mind, and very specifically living in Africa, and more so now Ghana. So these like-minded brothers and sisters came together under the umbrella of Bamboo Roots Collective. And Bamboo Roots Collective was the name was decided because when you consider the nature of how bamboo grows, bamboo has a root system referred to as rhizomes, whereby the root system moves laterally. And if you were to sever two of those plants that were attached by that rhizome, you would only succeed in creating two independent systems. You know, the plant would not, neither plant would suffer. They would just continue to spread. And in turn, when you consider how bamboo grows, it's a plant very, very difficult to get rid of. I mean, when it wants to grow, it continues growing. So we saw the characteristics of such to be very appropriate. And we said, well, hey, let's go with bamboo roots, because this is how we want to see ourselves growing throughout the continent. And we are a cooperative works organization in that we do things collectively. No one person within the organization is responsible for any level of development. So what that would look like essentially is, you mentioned the registration, the survey of the land that took place. Originally, we were offered 200 acres of land by the chief of the village that we are a part of, that we've been invited into. Later, we just opted to receive 50 acres because I thought that 200 was a bit much. I myself couldn't even fathom how to develop 200 acres anytime soon. So rather than to look with our eyes so wide open, we were just like, well, hey, let's go with, a smaller parcel of land. And then later we even decided to scale that down to 24 acres, because at the time that we had received the land, we only had 6 families in the collective, which was maybe about 12 members. I'm happy to say since that time, we've grown to over 60 members, which was just a little less than 5 months ago. So now 24 acres is starting to look a little small.
Did you say 16, 16 or 60?
60.
Wow. Okay, fantastic. That's beautiful.
All praises. So when the survey work came up, we met with the surveyor here in Ghana. He shared with us what his costs for his services. Then we divided the deposit amongst 6 households, meaning there are some members who have, husbands and wives. So we all shared that cost. Then later, when the balance of the survey work was done, we had gained 1 new household. Another brother and his wife came into the collective. So then we were able to divide that number amongst 7 households instead of 6 households. So everybody's contribution was a little bit less the second go around. And we call these things cooperative economic initiatives, meaning that these are the types of initiatives that we put forth before the collective to say, let's all engage in cooperatively. Let's all put a portion in a pot so that we can raise the money so it's not, so much on one person. And later, the taxes and the registration of the land needed to be raised. So we put forth another cooperative economic initiative before the collective, but that was just a number of weeks ago. And now with us being 60 members, we were able to divide that and raise those monies relatively quickly. So, this is not a new idea. We're talking about things like, susus. Africa, this is indigenous to African culture, susus. So, what we're doing is we're just applying a strategy that is a part of our tradition as African people.
Can you describe or define what susus is?
So it's essentially a program of sharing resources. So for instance, a susu very traditionally would be like, if there are 10 people involved in that particular susu, then the goal would be, say, at the end of the month, $1,000 would be raised. So all 10 people would put in $100. Then they would give that $1,000 to the first member of the susu. Then the next month, all 10, even the one who was given the 1,000 the first month, would put another $100 back in, and then they would give that $1,000 to the second person. So this is essentially the characteristic of a susu. It's sharing resources, pooling resources together to be able to raise those monies and then give those to the members. A collective or a cooperative is not much different. What I would say the main difference is that it's not necessarily intended for the members to receive the monies directly, as as it is intended for the collective to just decide on how to go about utilizing those resources that benefit everyone collectively.
What you described as the susu, it sounds in Western parlance as a cooperative revolving line of credit, without necessarily a debt component to it, but just basically um, um, not a line of credit, but like an investment. When you're talking about like everybody's providing contribution, so that's the cooperative element, and then it rotates from person to person or family to family each month. There's the revolving nature of it, and it's not necessarily a line of credit that needs to be repaid, seemingly from what you're describing, but like an investment, recognizing that there's the understanding that everybody benefits within the collective iterations of that endeavor.
This is a better form of banking. The
Yeah.
idea of like what we might have learned growing up called the usury. This is somebody who is putting interest on top of, their lending, but we've seen the unscrupulous nature of this type of practice, but with susus, through African tradition, this is not about, someone with certain resources profiting off of someone else.
Right.
This is just, pooling together the resources that we have to empower each other.
Right. Well, I mean, and when you, as you described, I'm thinking of Ubuntu. I'm thinking, come on, the one of the principles of Kwanzaa is cooperative economics. That speaks to what you're describing as well. The Swahili term is escaping me at the moment. But I mean, like you said, this is something that is intrinsic and that's pervasive within African cultures, and Afrocentricity is that kind of notion of like, instead of like the premise of the individual and the individual trying to strategize and utilizing other individuals when it's advantageous, it's a matter of an intrinsic recognition of the collective nature of existence, and thus what behooves or what benefits the collective benefits the individuals accordingly. It's kind of like a changing of emphasis, and that being intrinsic within the very motivations and premise of political cooperation and economic cooperation accordingly. So if we could pause right here, I wanna like I'm getting some feedback, so I don't know if you can hear me. Are you still there? All right, cool. So I want to like there are a few components that I was thinking of. One is like obviously got to have the political cooperation, and you've spoken before about having a constitution, about some of the principles and methodologies of arriving at that as your collective a little while ago, earlier this past year or before that. And you just mentioned now the economic component of it, and bringing in everybody, adding up and putting in some contributions and making investments, making contributions to cover the costs that are involved with the community building. But before we get into those, actually, and it might be a little bit like putting the cart before the horse, but I think what would be helpful for brethren to kind of like see this, to like feel it, is to talk additionally about some of the things you share with your Echo Village training, in the context of where brethren are at this moment. So, for example, like at this moment, things are in flux on this land. I mean, and there's a lot of uncertainty across the board, across the spectrum of hierarchies. And part of that pertains to like real estate. And I don't like use the term real estate. I'll say property or land. And what to do with land. And so we know for years, generations, there's been vacant buildings, there's been abandoned lots and everything else like that. People have tried to like overtake it or squat or get it granted additionally, some with additional efficacy otherwise. Here's the question that I'm posing. Is like, let's say brethren, like a group, a collective that already has like some kind of foundation of cooperation is provided with an abandoned apartment building or an abandoned lot, and has that in their stewardship, and is interested in establishing a residential cooperative, an intentional community. And so I wonder whether you can provide some like basic primary kind of guidelines or tips about what to think about in actually constructing an intentional community, basically from scratch or utilizing with what's available at the moment. What are some of the major issues that brethren need to be mindful of when planning an intentional community, whether it's off the grid infrastructure or whatever? What are some of the main issues?
That's an excellent question. I would say one of the first considerations is just the idea of human nature. You know, most of us want to know, you know, what's in it for me. So if somebody has the ambitions to bring people together, then I would strongly encourage that individual or group of individuals to really consider, you know, what kind of expectations people may have when working to, say, market or promote your ambitions. So if someone had of land or any structure and they wanted to have how to make their program attractive, you know, what is going to be their selling point, if you will? Is it that, you know, they're going to provide safe housing, or in that maybe they're a vegan community and, you know, they're striving to attract other vegans, you know, or people of particular nutrition practices, if they, you know, are of a particular political, you know, agenda. So it's just a matter of just kind of understanding, you know, what is your selling point to some degree, and how attractive that may prove to others. I think is one of the good first steps. We lost audio.
Can you hear me now? Ah, there it is. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, I got you now.
So, all right, I think we should be okay. I was noticing that as you were talking, I was trying to fix that, but obviously there was a challenge. All right. So basically, you're talking about a shared purpose, a shared objective, and uh, having that strengthen the focus and the work of the collective accordingly. And so uh, let's presume that those things are secure. Like it's a group that's established for a while, that's been working on this idea for a while, and so that part is established. They've actually even worked with like a county agency or maybe a state agency, and have been provided with a specific plot of land. So they have those things together, but they live in different places at the moment, and they're interested in eventually moving on to this place, and that plot of land includes like an abandoned apartment building, but it's basically like, and so they're tasked with having to establish an infrastructure, the water, the heating, the electricity, the communications, and so what are some of like the pragmatic things that stand out in terms of like what people should be mindful of, particularly with the interest of building optimally off the grid, with being independent from the municipal utilities, and additionally, what are some of the opportunities? What are things that can be done? And what are some of like the major things to look out for to be sure to do, whether it's rain collection, what to do with the soil to make it healthy in that process. And additionally, what are some of the things to be thinking of specifically pragmatically when constructing that intentional community? Let's say the intention is doing urban agriculture, and having like a safe space for people to go to. So those are the elements. But other than that, what are some of the infrastructure issues that people should be mindful of?
So if we're talking about development primarily in the United States, I would say one of the things you would want to be familiar with is some of the particular, let's say, some of the requirements for establishing any type of community, if you will. And I've seen this historically with intentional communities in the United States, is that a lot of them have met certain obstacles to go about developing in the manner that they desired, uh, if that should be, you know, off-grid development, then the local county, you know, zoning and codes, you know, that come along with such that say this is how you have to go about. I mean, you'd want to be aware of these things because there has been historic resistance toward intentional communities establishing communes and so forth throughout the United States. So you would definitely want to have a sense of, how feasible it is to carry out your plans, because ultimately that resistance could be very discouraging. If you're met, with by force, say by police or resistance, and this is not uncommon. I won't name any situations, but I'm familiar with a number of them. So I would say definitely a level of education, is very important to just understand how possible it is to do what it is that you set out to do. And I would definitely say that developing sustainably is very key. It allows for the preservation of resources, meaning why pay for electricity when the power is coming from the sky, from the sun all the time? Why pay for water when, it rains and then there's water underneath the ground in the aquifer? You just have to understand the technology to tap into and to harness, these vast resources. So there again, another level of education is necessary. Unless you have the ways and means to continue just to pay for people to come out and do certain things, then you might want to begin to learn to do some of these things for yourself, or work to attract others who have these particular skill sets to your community so that they can in turn contribute in that manner. Organic agriculture, absolutely something very important. We understand, the harms of, chemical fertilizers, pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, you name it. We know that genetically modified crops and seeds, these things are as harmful as they are. We need to begin to look at holistic organic agriculture as the solution, to the nutritional challenges that are confronting, this global population. So we would definitely encourage people to plant organic, and to grow organically. Those are probably some of the things that I would definitely encourage people to look out for, and some of the things to begin to practice initially in establishing a community.
That's appreciative. And you mentioned some of the tendencies of obstacles from the different agencies that have aversions towards that type of independence or whatever. What might be some of the increasingly accessible off the grid technologies or ventures that people might think of? You mentioned like why rely upon the grid when rain falls as it is, or why rely upon the grid when there's electricity from the solar. And additionally, now we know that there are windmills around, there's solar paneling, and solar paneling is now a major thing with households. People can do that and actually contribute to the grid with the excess amount of electricity that's generated through their homegrown or their home installed solar units, particularly in places like in the West Coast. And additionally, in your experience, I mean, you visited, you've studied at a number of eco villages, and additionally, and so you're privy to a lot of that kind of that scene, that culture, that information. What might be some of those technologies or opportunities for off the grid utilities that are increasingly accessible, that there's less obstructions with, that are increasingly comfortable for amidst the mainstream?
Probably one of the easier is going to be solar. There are definitely, rules regarding the use of solar within each respective state or county that, everyone would want to just understand. But solar technology, has definitely become a whole lot more common today. It doesn't take a lot to even build a solar generator. I mean, you can find, a lot of the components now at Home Depot, oftentimes with the exception of the solar panel. You can go to Home Depot and find, small inverters, and, you can order a controller off of, Amazon, or, so, these things aren't hard to do anymore. You can watch a DIY video on YouTube and you can put together your own solar generator. So I would say solar is definitely one of the.
Looks like there was a freeze. Brother AhmahtsiYahu mentioned that there's the propensity of there being a disconnection during the course of the session.
Easier
Um,
technologies to apply
there
now
he
that will
is.
offer sustainable living, you know, from the main
Can you hear me? I don't know if it's mine or his connection. There it is. Okay. Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. I got you. Yeah.
Okay. So in the state of Georgia, where I was living prior to coming to Ghana,
Mm.
I had learned that if you lived in a home where the utilities weren't on, like, you know, you were physically living in the home, you were renting it, but you didn't have the power turned on, then they would consider that, you know, something to which, you know, is not lawful, you know, like
Interesting.
you have to have electricity in the house, you know, up until a certain point, or else, you know, they would say that this is not a livable condition, you know. So I was thinking to myself, man, you know, so I can't just put solar, you know, a generator in my house and just do what I want to do. Well, there were laws, you know. So and this is something that I've learned from various instances throughout the United States. I couldn't put a rain barrel on my own gutter. You know, in the state of Oregon, you can't capture rainwater because rainwater is considered the property of the state. You know, so again, it's very important to learn these kinds of rules and so forth. So solar is definitely one of the easier technologies to apply. You know, water catchment also very easy. You know, things like boreholes and wells, you know, you're really going to have to own the land to do that. You know, you
Ah,
just can't dig a well like that in your backyard nowadays,
yeah.
just considering too the kind of electrical wiring and plumbing and stuff that is often in the grounds nowadays. It's not easy just to dig 40 feet down to tap into some groundwater.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that helps give people a better picture because you know some people are ideas people and they can get on with concepts. Some people need to like know what you're talking about, like have the physicality and be able to picture it. So that's one of the reasons why I emphasize that. So I think that helps in what you described, just like give people a better picture of like seeing this happening and then having motivation to go through the rigors of the political discussions and arrangements to kind of further the steps along that line. So that's something that you've described in a number of your posts on YouTube, and additionally about the 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 um, the political process, the political agreements that are established. You mentioned that in the convo today, and so I'm coming from a perspective of like 20 years ago. I was in Africa. I did a study abroad. I lived in there for a modest period, and it was an awesome spiritual experience for me. But 20 years ago, few cats were doing that. Few cats were on that. And when I was there, I thought about like, yo, can I live here? And back then it was a big move, and it was like a big disconnect from everything that was established here, and so it was difficult for me to see that. But I do know from that experience, like the cats who were with me were on that same thing because they were thinking the same thing as well, and so I know like when I saw when I saw your channel for the first occasion, and in your intro shows like all the different places you've been around Africa, South Africa, Kenya, Ghana, and additionally, I was like, yo, he's on that vibe. He's on that like that consciousness, and the reason why I say all that is because I do find that it's that kind of conscientiousness is very helpful. It's like minds, and when people are of like minds, it's easier to arrive at certain political agreements accordingly because there's an additional factor, there's an additional force and inspiration that's guiding the collective towards that agreement. It ain't all peaches and cream. I'm sure, and like there are difficult disagreements and this and the other, but there's that overarching, yo, this is about something greater than ourselves, and so it's easier to like quell the ego, be humble, and recognize that we all share this greater purpose at hand. Now that's a convo that's further difficult to have on this land at this moment because, as you know, living on here, that like cats are caught up in all the different things. So even though there's a shared sentiment of adversity and affliction, there's all the different types of opinions and towards the solution, and even further methodologies of arriving at that solution. And so I wonder if you can share some tips for brethren who are on the Afrocentric conscientious tip, and for brothers who want to be there but have yet to get there. What are some tips of like that you found from your experience of where you were like, this is for a greater purpose, or kind of like those aha moments when you were like holding on to something and you just recognize, you know what, I can let go of this a little bit for the sake of something bigger at the moment. So what might be some of those things that people can be mindful of in having these combos? Because I'm having these combos on a daily basis at this point. And we get into a little bit of like a roadblock with some cats. So what is, from your experience and getting to where you are at this point, what have been some of those like aha moments or things that you just recognize, yo, this is for something greater. I can set this aside for the moment.
I would say that the conversations are getting easier because of what's taking place on the planet right now. I would say prior to 4 months ago, the idea of back to Africa, didn't have the same popularity that it has right now. As a result of COVID-19, there are people right now who are like, hey, let's get out of Western society. The house is on fire. It's hot, and they just want to get out. So Africa has definitely gotten a whole lot more attractive. So for those like ourselves who are here, who are displaying the viability of life in Africa, it's an easier sell now. We're not having to try to convince anybody like that. For those who desire to live in Africa, they just want to basically be inspired, number one, and then they want to have certain expectations. Is it safe? So we want to demonstrate the safety, of living in Africa. Well, can I sustain myself? Okay, we want to show just how well you can sustain yourself here. So it's an easier sell. For those who maybe choose to remain in Western society, America, for instance, I don't think it's so much a hard sell, because with resources being as limited as they are right now, unfortunately, with unemployment and so forth, the idea of people preserving their resources is attractive. So if somebody creating a community, this is going to prove to be something very attractive. So I would say that it's not the obstacles aren't as great as they once were, but you're still going to find that there are going to be those who maybe are doubtful. They're going to doubt the process. They're going to, they're just not going to apply the level of faith, and courage to go forward to practice a level of independence, because mind you, we're coming out of a society and teachings that have been rooted in chattel slavery, so the idea of physically being free, unfortunately it comes from having broken the chains and the shackles. It takes you first mentally, breaking those chains and those shackles before you can ever truly say, okay, now I'm going to begin to practice a level of physical freedom. So this is definitely something that requires a level of decolonizing your mind. And then in turn, you would be better able to establish yourself here, get acclimated to the culture and the traditions of Africa, and then be able to develop, a homestead or a community in such a way where you can live viably amongst those of like mind, if you would choose to do so.
Thank you. I have my mute on because we got some sounds going on. So I appreciate that insight. And also, to be honest and candid, I think one of the other things amidst the contemporary conditions, I definitely agree with the decolonization of the mindset to facilitate the agreement. And that's difficult to do when cats are still living on the plantation. And so even when things get hotter in the house, some cats, it's still difficult to kind of have a constructive kind of pragmatic cooperation. One of the other things I think that you have going for yourself is also like results. Like you're doing it and you have results to show for it. So it's not just a matter of like mouthpiece that I can be accused of very significantly, but like you've got results. You're living there. You're living it. So you don't have to like You don't have to like be a big salesman or whatever. All you have to do is show how you're living at this moment, and there it is. And also, I mean, you've been doing that for a while, and then you also.
Okay.
Are you there? We got audio at the moment. I don't hear the audio.
Somebody's knocking on my front door. Can you
Oh,
hold
okay.
one moment?
Yeah.
Okay, just pause for a second.
All
Okay?
right, yeah.
All right. Okay. My apologies.
No, please, no apologies at all. Thank you, bro. I like the
Okay.
wall hanging you got up there as well. So
Oh.
it reminds me. It reminds me when I was in the land of the Nkasa in Cape Town. Like we would go to the market, and they're all, even African crafts are so beautiful, and people are so enamored by that. And one of the things we would get were those banana leaf like little mats. You know what I'm talking about? Like they had the banana leaves, and they would like do all types of like landscape drawings or whatever with just like banana leaves cut out. And it was like inexpensive. It was like a rand for one, which is like maybe like 15 cents. And so I got a huge stack of those. And so I'm reminded of that when I see that, because it's just like it's like earthen artwork. And when I brought it here, like people were eating it up and like loving it, and we were getting it framed and putting it on the walls and everything else like that. So anyways, I'm reminded of that when I see your wall hanging. So I appreciate that. So, but I was basically just talking about, like, I think one of the things that you got going for yourself is that you're doing it. And you don't have to do a lot of like showmanship or whatever else. All you have to do is like show how you're living, and people are encouraged and inspired through that. I think African folk on this land particularly, like they've seen a lot of people come and go with the mouthpiece and everything else like that. There's a lot of credibility that comes with people who are actually living it and have results and to show for it. And you've been doing it for a while. I'm uncertain how long you've been living in Ghana, but I know it's been for a little bit. Even before getting provided the plot of land. But I think that plot of land is actually a big, like, huge thing for a lot of cats. Like, yo, they're actually doing it, and then they can see themselves being part of that because they see the opportunity and the tangibility of it. And so I think that goes a long way. So one of the follow-up questions. I'm being, again, mindful of the time and looking towards wrapping up at this point. So again, thank you for the generosity of your time and insight in this joint. When we talk about economic cooperation, and we look at where brethren are on this land at this moment, and identifying what are the economic gems and treasures that brethren bring to the table at this moment that can be utilized for trade with other groups. For, I mean, as you know, how the market goes. I think a lot of brethren on this side don't have a low self perception about like economic viability, and so we can look at things like storytelling, music, culture. That's very widely known around the earth about African brethren on this continent being able to do things. We also know we have brilliance, and we have and technology and knowledge and everything else like that. But when we're talking about cats in the hood with an interest of like either repatriating or building here, what might be some of the economic gems that you readily identify that brethren bring to the table and can offer in a institutional and systemic way with other groups in exchange for the necessary technology and resources that are necessary for community living?
That's an excellent question. I would say the idea of the cooperative itself is going to first prove one of the biggest sustaining elements, because as it relates to Africa, for those who would seek to come back to Africa, maybe the idea of getting a job is just not viable, you know? So if you're not of an age where you're getting retirement or Social Security or VA benefits or even disability, you know, then you're left to needing to have another level of creativity to sustain yourself. So the idea of being a part of a strong collective or cooperative whereby those involved would be willing to pool their resources together to sustain any number of those brothers and sisters who are a part of it, to go over and say, pave the way, you know, then that cooperative, that collective is going to be very important for everyone to pool whatever resources they have together until other ideas are are are, are come up with that says this is what we can do to generate revenue. But that takes having a lay of the land, you know, even respectively where, you know, say our brothers and sisters are living in Western society, you know, if their people are losing their jobs, then okay, where's the money going to come from for everyone to work together, say to buy the apartment building that everyone has been looking at to build up as a cooperative or a place to live communally, or to go and buy that $15,000 solar system, you know? So you really have to see the value initially of just working together until more ideas are generated to say this is what we can do to create industry. But for those brothers and sisters who do have, you know, particular skill sets, of course, that's going to be very valuable, you know, because it might not be so much about, well, how can we make money from the various skill sets that we have, as much as it is, well, how can we preserve our resources? Meaning, do we have a carpenter in our midst who can come and do these works rather than us outsource and hire a carpenter? Do we have an electrician in our midst rather than us go and hire an electrician? So I would say looking at the skills and the talents that the members of that particular group have so that they can work to offset costs is going to be valuable, more so than just, you know, how much money can somebody bring, because nowadays resources seem to be getting more and more limited.
Yeah. And I'm reminded of some insight a brother shares recently. And I'm one of the things that you do that's appreciated on your channel is that you interview other brethren, and you exactly all the things that you're saying about cooperation. It's so evident, and you're very approach, and you showcase other endeavors. You showcase other brethren who visit, who show an interest, other brethren who've been there before you and who've hosted you, and additionally, and so there's that cooperation. So now I missed that. Sometimes it can be difficult who said what to remember who said what. But so I think this might have been one of the episodes of your channel. But basically, your brother was talking about that experience of repatriating and the economic implications, and being less concerned about the status and like the sense of ego that's attached to what they're doing, and just recognizing that, yo, come through. We need people to work the land. We need people to do this. And so it's less a matter of like where one stands on the socioeconomic hierarchy of labor. It's like, yo, this is what needs to be done. I can do it. Yo, what's important is for me to be part of this collective and contribute what I can and receive what I genuinely need or my family genuinely needs accordingly, rather than just being like elitist about the type of labor I provide or otherwise. Now that's very difficult for cats with me with many degrees and this and the other to kind of have that kind of mindset, because it's tough. It's deeply entrenched in self-esteem that people have. But when you identify an endeavor, a purpose, a collective that's fulfilling like the needs that people have, it's easier to like say, yo, we need to dig the ground here to plant the seeds. That's what needs to be done. That's where the benefit is for the community. Let's contribute accordingly. So that's anyways. I don't know. I'm not certain what my point is for sharing that, but I'm thinking about that when you were talking about that, and I guess it's just a matter of we have some brethren from Burkina Faso at the moment arriving at the park, so in Congo, but bonjour. There's a brother from Ghana here. So anyway, I guess it's just again putting ourselves, our individualism beyond outside of like the forefront, and recognizing that again the propensity for compromise and quelling our egos for the greater good, for the greater benefit and the greater collective. So, and that comes to politics, that comes to economics as well. What might you see the economic needs of African brethren in Ghana at this moment that might be increasingly directly addressed and served by brethren on this continent? And when we're talking about economic trade in the diaspora, what might be some of those things that we can start to do, like some village to village type of trading, and additionally?
So, I may not be the most knowledgeable on that question, and I'll be very honest. For myself, I won't be the first to just start saying, okay, here's the industries that we should engage in to create commerce. That's not my strong suit. But what I would encourage,
I gotta say hi to the brother right here.
Take your time.
Yeah. Someone at my front door. Ça va? Ça va? Comment ça va? Oh, I think I just started my iTunes up. Can you hear that? I don't know.
Oh, I don't hear anything.
Okay, cool. My concern is just the audio getting blocked. Well, it's on the podcast, I don't know. So anyways, thank you for your patience.
Sure.
But yeah, you were saying that the economics is less of the forte.
Yeah. I wouldn't be the first to be able to share, what kind of commerce would I encourage, between villages and so forth. But one thing that I would say is to definitely practice levels of sustainable development. These are the things that we've already talked about. And then something else that I would encourage us to begin to consider is a level of doing for self, because what I imagine would come from that level of doing for self is you'd begin to really see, what necessities are within that community. For instance, right now, there's this tremendous need for us to be able to build houses economically and to build houses effectively and efficiently, because even in the United States, for that matter, I mean, the cost of building a house is enormous, sometimes in the $100,000 range and more. Because you're having to hire a company, and that company has their own costs for their services. But when you look at African antiquity, we didn't have to take out loans and mortgages for building houses 100 years ago in Africa. You got together with the brothers in the village and y'all made some adobe mud blocks and got some thatch and made a roof on your house.
And you help build each other's houses.
Exactly. And I'm not encouraging people just to come back to Africa and, go build the mud hut. But what I'm saying is that we do need to look at is how can we begin to get to a place of being able to create communities efficiently, effectively, and even cost effectively. So for me, industry is born out of necessity,
right? Exactly.
Rather than just saying, what can we do to make money? We've been doing that on the planet long enough, and look at where we're at right now. So I don't think it's about what can we just do to make money. Sure, you can come to Ghana, you can find someone who's got a big field of pineapples and get into an agreement with them to say, hey, I want to ship some pineapples from Ghana so I can distribute them in these grocery stores. Yeah, you're going to make money, but is that really benefiting anyone directly other than just either the grower or the grocery store. We need to look at, how can we benefit, how can larger groups of people benefit from engaging in very necessary industry? Because mind you, even the carbon footprint that it takes to get a pineapple from Ghana to America, I personally don't want to engage in an industry like that, because I don't want to keep promoting these aspects of globalization. I want to start looking at industries that are born out of localization.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think about the idea of so one of the things that I share, with brethren is like letting go of the idea of like the individual house with the 4.5 car garage and the 5 bedrooms, and additionally with the plot of land, the nice gated house or whatever, gated yard, and increasingly embrace the idea, particularly in this cold weather climate, of vertical construction and living in a flat. It can be a comfortable flat, but living in a flat with other people of the same families, of the same ideology and culture, and living in community in that sense, where again, the infrastructure is shared. It's increasingly efficient. It's efficient utilization of the surface area. And we can build additional components and facilities around that as an immediate village in and of itself, but just living vertically. What are your thoughts about that concept? How much do you think it might fly in additionally?
Yeah, it would certainly.
It's less of a necessity or applicability in Ghana, I know, because the climate is different and the conditions are different. But I just, as a concept, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it would just be an agreement, between those involved, who would say, yes, these are the benefits from living, in such an environment. I personally am not too knowledgeable of, communalism in an apartment or, a multi-story building necessarily. So I just might not be the most knowledgeable on that particular subject.
Okay, that's fair enough. I appreciate that. So, all right, we've been at this for nearly about an hour here. So I have one other thing to ask you as kind of like a wrap-up joint before I do, but I want to ask you if there's anything that you wanted to cover or anything that you think about sharing as we get to ready to wrap it up.
First of all, I just want to thank you again for the invitation to participate. My encouragement, lastly, is just encourage our brothers and sisters to be of good faith, to be of good courage, to go forward. If it's their ambitions to remain in Western society, you would definitely want to begin to practice, some sustainable living there, because we can see the challenges are increasing, resources are becoming more limited. But for those that are, ever more so ambitious, Africa is a great place to call home. And there are those like ourselves, organizations that are here that would be happy to reach out to offer as much support as we can in your ultimate repatriation.
Cool, I appreciate that. So here's one other concept, one other idea that I share with you, and interested in hearing what your thoughts are. One thing I'm sharing with brethren recently is, actually been doing it for a while, but particularly recently, is emphasizing a Pan-African heritage archives. And the basic concept is establishing an official archives that houses the works, the written works, music, speeches, books, additionally, of brethren who have emerged from the Middle Passage, and establishing it as like a go-to place that you don't have to question the legitimacy. It's there to get just information, just to get the actual works, whether it's the original, whether it's a copy or whatever, but to have it and to know that this is a trusted source. Whatever question, like if you ever have a question, what was MLK's speech on this? What did Malcolm say about that? What did Marcus Garvey say about that? What was Kwame Nkrumah? Well, he didn't necessarily come from the Middle Passage, but you get what I'm saying. Like whatever anybody said, whatever the book is, a copy of it is there. The full copy is accessible because that's part of our heritage. That's part of our lineage. That's part of our inheritance and our responsibility in continuing to honor our ancestors. And so establishing a heritage center like that, or a heritage archives. And that's it. That's what it is. It can be, the idea is it being physically housed, the server being housed at the University of Ghana. So there is that temporality of it. But anybody from all around the earth can access it throughout the diaspora. And that's all it is. Now, that's the idea in and of itself. But the further consideration is that political organizing, cultural programs, educational programs, additionally can build off of access to that. There can be forums that meet. People can talk about things. People can start economic cooperatives initially based upon seeing people with the same interest in those forums. But the archives is just the archives itself, and people can build around it. So I share that with you and what your thoughts are about that, and that's what you think.
It sounds excellent. I mean, it's a great resource. You know, I would imagine with something like that, you know, the popularity of it would be tremendous.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anybody in Ghana or that you can think of that we might talk with whom we might talk about maybe some further steps towards making that actuality in the modest version?
Yeah, you know, there's a brother here. He's a tremendous intellectual. His name is Obadale Cambon, and he would be a great person, you know, to get in touch with.
Okay. Cool. So I appreciate that. So that's AhmahtsiYahu. Thank you very much for your generosity, your insight, your calm, your knowledge, your inspiration. And I invite cats to just check out your videos because, I mean, like, again, I mean, you're doing it. You don't have to even say much. All you got to do is say what you did today. And that's like schools right there being built. Serious, yo.
All praises.
Most definitely. All praises, most definitely. But I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you sharing some of your time today, and responding to our convo. So with that said, any words to wrap it up with?
Just once again, you know, I just really want to thank you for the opportunity, and you know, I encourage our brothers and sisters, be of good faith, be of good courage, you know, and go forward and let's build this world that we desire to live in.
Most definitely. Thanks to God. Thanks again.
All right.
AhmahtsiYahu.
All praises. Take care.
You. All right, you too. Shalom.
All right, then. Shalom.
All right, so that's the convo. And to be honest, seriously, actually, it seemed comparatively long. And that's not a comment on the nature of the convo necessarily. It's just a matter of like, what am I saying? First of all, it's late, and I'm trying to get this uploaded on the day I say it's going to be uploaded as much as possible. So it's late. I'm in the park. I've been sitting here for a couple of hours, and so maybe that's why it seemed long. But as long as it seems, rich. And even further, there's so much further that could be said. So much further details, stories, narratives, topics, and additionally, cooperative economics, political cooperation, spiritual journey, mental consciousness of cultural consciousness, ancestral consciousness. There's so many topics that are rife, so many combos that are rife within the experience that Brother AhmahtsiYahu shares, and like not even like podcasts, but just like series of podcasts to be built from that combo. So again, it's difficult to kind of encapsulate all that within an hour. So I think we hit upon some beneficial topics, and share some considerations for further building. And again, he has a lot of stuff on his channel, on his YouTube channel, and he's very responsive to reaching out. Now, given what he's described recently, I'm not certain how accessible he is at the moment, but he's notably responsive to people who reach out, and so I share that and encourage that accordingly. This convo was actually maybe about a month ago, a number of weeks ago. So it's the concluding convo for this quote unquote season. I don't know if I'm calling it a season or whatever, but for this actual part of the series of the podcast, there's one other episode, which is the actual original intro to this podcast, which is actually like 2 hours long. So because it's so long, I actually recorded another one and saved the original recording for a later upload. So that's what we're looking at for next week. But in terms of this convo, this is like a very appropriate convo to wrap up and like put on pause for a second. I think I might have mentioned previously the consideration of chopping it up with people in the village and just kind of doing impromptu joints on the street. And having like 5-minute combos or whatever, and see what comes from that. But in terms of what I just did, in terms of like reaching out to people, coordinating, and then scheduling a convo, doing the convo, recording it. I mean, the mechanics of it are very bare bones in terms of editing and additionally making it snazzy, whatever. But even that which I do, even today, like this, it takes a few hours, and at this point, I have less availability to just to be honest and candid about it. I guess less availability to be doing this on a weekly basis, to devote that much time. So I consider the benefit of further combos to be able to delve like further comfortably and like relaxedly into combo, rather than having like a set agenda or a set of questions like specifically established. I find it in my nature of talking with people, just like freestyle and like just building from what we share, and through that, just because of who I am and what I do, that naturally gets into it, and what the other person is and what the other person does, that naturally gets into it as well. So there is intrinsically structure within it, but I find that for myself, when I have something set in mind, instead of like fully listening and absorbing what the person is saying and then building from it, I tend to like focus on what it is that I have to say to keep in format with whatever the theme is or whatever else. And that's beneficial for people who do that. But for me, particularly like for this kind of vibe of just having like not casual combo, but like relaxed combo, it's different from what my comfort zone is or my forte is particularly. And also if it is structured, if it is that along those lines, it's beneficial to like be like considerably prepared and having notes, doing preliminary readings, and have it like that material in mind, so that the questions and the follow-up and everything else can be increasingly specific, pointed, and intentional towards productive responses of narratives, episodic descriptions, and additionally that helps to convey the experience, the information, the understanding in an increasingly immediate way for the audience and the recipient. So that comes from doing preliminary work. And already, if I'm doing hours just for what I'm doing at the moment, doing preliminary work means additional hours. And again, availability issues. So like I said, having convos on the street has a different dynamic to it, because there's a certain element of spontaneity, there's energy, there's inspiration. It can be even freestyle flows in ciphering. So we'll see what that is, and it might be like 5 minutes, it might be 2 hours. I have all those type of conversations here in the village, and to be honest, actually, I'm even less available for that at the moment. So, but the consideration is when I do have certain availability, perhaps recording it when people are amenable to doing that. The question I think though for myself is like, at what point do I introduce that into the convo? Because at this point, like, I just sit and people come up and we just chop it up, and then all of a sudden 3 hours are gone. And so if I bring out like, hey, do you mind if I record this for a podcast? Then it's like, oh wait, now the vibe just deciphered, dispelled, and diluted, whatever. So anyways, that's things I'm pensive of at the moment. So we see where that goes. Maybe additional information in the next week or so. I'll follow up. I mean, I can talk about the different points specifically that brother AhmahtsiYahu and I talk about, but I think I talk them up a lot already, and with due reason. And the only other thing to say is just like to check out his stuff for those who had interest, and for those who have less of an interest in Afrocentricity or repatriation, consider the work and the endeavor of AhmahtsiYahu and the Bamboo Roots Collective and the other organizations that he describes as a paradigm for any people of any ethnicity, any religiosity, and additionally, in these increasingly evolving and I don't want to say devolving, but some people find it challenging conditions that all people are experiencing in one way or another to some proximity or another. So this is a matter of there's a strength of thinking, there's a strength of discipline that comes with this intentional community living and endeavor. And it's a strength of thinking, a strength of living, a strength of discipline that is increasingly independent from conventional constructs and conventional predatoriness, to be honest. It's other than utopian, but it gives insight that is very relevant and needed for all peoples of all communities. So guess what? You can learn from Black lives too. How about that? And Black lessons matter. How about that? That's less trend worthy or whatever, but further apropos. Anyways, that's what I'm saying. It's like there's benefit in the lesson. There's benefit in the example. There's absence of perfection or whatever, but there's a considerable amount to be doing. So there's that. I will build further on that notion of the Pan-African Heritage Archive. I basically described the gist of it when I talked with Brother AhmahtsiYahu. I'll share this follow-up consideration. A project, a campaign. The working title being something like hashtag Fix Miss Lauren a Plate. So basically, the scenario is this. The basic solicitation, the call out, is for HBCUs. People can Google that for who know that's what that means. HBCUs, a consortium of HBCUs, particularly the elite, Hampton, Howard, Morehouse, Spelman, AUC, and additionally, obviously there are a number further than that. But anyways, elite HBCUs negotiating a recording contract with Lauryn Hill and a number of additional artists, but Lauryn Hill and her selected artists to complete an album, a CD, a playlist, whatever we call them things these days, to complete an album that consists of her singing traditional songs of Africa with artists, musicians from Africa. So it's like a Pan-African traditional songs CD. Ghana, Zululand, Ethiopia, Kenya, Nigeria, but not just the nations, the tribes. Xhosa, Zulu, Swahili, Maasai, Amharic, Igbo, Twi, Ashanti, Yoruba, Wolof, Senegal, Hausa, Tutsi, and Hutu, just a collection of traditional songs from each of these cultures, traditions, tribes, experiences, and it being an educational, cultural endeavor for brethren of the Pan-African diaspora, and something to give that a strengthened connection, relatability, continuing particularly in a legacy of Marley, Africa Unite, and additionally, I didn't put in Zimbabwe in there, but you know Zimbabwe's there. So that's the project. That's the campaign. The project, the campaign, the call out, the solicitation, and the consideration is doing it in the respective language, the tribal language of each of those tribes, each of those traditions, and then to do a complementary, like an adjoining CD of contemporary versions of each of those songs in English, so that there's some continuity for brethren who are new to those languages, and so that's increasingly accessible. So does that sound like a big project? It's actually not. It's actually very doable, and it's actually very doable by HBCUs. And it's just a matter of, as Roosevelt says, make me do it. So the consideration is, how about this? HBCU students, where you at? Make HBCUs do that. It don't take too much, maybe a few million, an initial kind of investment to agree to terms to a deal. Might HBCU students be able to convince HBCU administrations to complete a deal? Doesn't seem like too big of an ask. How about by the end of next semester? How about that? Now that's whenever putting cats on the clock, that changes the elements, but it's relevant. And with all the hashtags and the protests and everything like this, how about something constructive? How about something that truly contributes to the culture? And further. And I don't mean to sound talking down or whatever else, but when cats want to be with swagger, that's part of the weight of swagger as well. So anyways, that's a consideration. Now, there are additional elements. I mean, it's so doable, it's so accessible, it's so like wanting to be done, like waiting to be done. It's just a matter of cats getting together and doing it. I mean, even with the HBCUs putting together from discretionary funds and additionally, just like a pot of change, and then going up to the AU, the African Union, the African Development Bank, and additional entities from the continent, respective national governments, ministries of foreign affairs, ministries of culture, ministries of education, and each one adding up. There's so much to be put together just to complete a recording deal that has a considerable amount of reference. You know what? I mean, I have a whole spiel about this, but to sum it up, like it's a matter of recognizing that W.E.B. Du Bois, William Edward Bernard Du Bois, wrote The Souls of Black Folk over a century ago, talking about the next century is the problem, the next century is the problem of the color line. And we see how things shape up in the century that follows that, and how much of an influence the work he does, the work he shares, contributes to that. I provide that Lauryn Hill's The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is the next century's answer to the souls of black folk. That's the type of depth and resonance that her music, specifically in that album, has through this day for a generation. And it's a matter of stepping up the plate, stepping up the bar, stepping up the responsibility, and the call. So anyways, that's the consideration. There's additional elements to it, but that's the basic gist of it. Proceeds, a percentage of the proceeds going to establish the Pan-African Heritage Archive. How about that? And involving genuinely the diaspora, brethren who speak English, brethren who speak Espanol, brethren who speak Portuguese, brethren who speak Francais, on this Western Hemisphere. The colonial languages that brethren are still connected with, but again, having introduction to the traditional songs in the traditional languages, with traditional musicians that accompany Sister Lauryn Hill on that project. So anyways, that's the joint. And it's so here. So anyways, that's what I share for the moment. Ideas. It requires cooperation. So I share accordingly. In terms of the other stuff that we're working on, it still continues. I think it's appropriate for me to do anything further specific on that on the next episode, God willing. So I want to keep it focused on the topic for today, even though I talk about general business stuff on each joint. At this moment, like I said, it's nearing the midnight hour. It's around about midnight. How many references can I do in less than 30 seconds. That's about it for the moment. But it's late, so I'm less motivated in talking about business. Again, appreciation for brother AhmahtsiYahu for participating in this convo. At this point, we have a lightweight library of episodes of convos, and I still have yet to even like promote it tough one way or another. There's a certain timelessness within the nature of the convo, because there's an absence of too many like specific contemporary pop culture references or whatever. It's pretty much like increasingly issues based, so there's less concern about the timeliness of it. But anyways, that's me thinking aloud at the moment. Trying to think of anything else to share before I wrap this up. That's pretty much it. So for those who listen to this, I appreciate that. And again, next week we have, God willing, the concluding session for this immediate series, for this immediate iteration. And we'll see how things proceed from there. And I intend to share some additional details about where additional projects that we're working on this side are progressing. So that being said, namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, zaijian, mir, adios, te chakaris, esempena asamubo, kirlek ufred, one love and peace, happiness and liberation.